Gentlemen, we'll resume the meeting. Welcome back to the councillors online. Hope you managed to cook yourself up some noodles and hot water maybe and a cup of tea as we prepare to resume proceedings with the AT update. And there are quite a lot of items that are before us today. City centre parking, loading zones, dynamic lanes and streets, the ferry program, cruise ships, looking forward to that one, Kingdon Street, K Road, and as Councillor Filipaina was alluding to, there's a little bit of an update on Doppelmayr and Transit next. I think we've got the chair of the AT board here. Welcome, Richard, and I saw one of the board members, Andrew Ritchie, a little bit earlier. He appears to have gone. So over to you, Dean.
Right, kia ora, committee, and it's good to be here, although it feels like lunch is extended for some, but that's fine. And for all those online, welcome. Today, we've got a series of just sort of micro updates. I'm going to be taking the information in the presentation you've got as read. We've got a series of people just come in and just maybe highlight certain items, but it's really an opportunity for questions if we're okay to take that approach. Right, I've got the clicker. So those are the updates you can see there. If I can just start off with some of the recent highlights and operational issues. You'll take as read there. I'll just reiterate the point that April year to date, we continue to meet or exceed all of our statement of intent performance metrics, which I continue to be pleased about. Having said that, we've still got 2 months to go. So there's always a bit of a worry as we approach the finish line, but at least we've got a good head of steam up. But having said that, a lot to be proud of. Not in this update, but it's you'll see it referenced there as the RLTP, so that's out for consultation. When it was last out for consultation, we received just under 6,000 public submissions. About halfway through, we're already at 9,000. So our appeal to Auckland is to get involved, have a view, get that view in, is realising dividends. And for those that are listening, either as political leaders or in the public, just really encourage you to encourage others to make their submission. It's very important we get that voice in. You'll see here too that Auckland Transport was shortlisted for a World Procurement Award for the Matakana Link Road project, and that's something that we're also very proud of in the way that we work with the community to deliver an awesome result. If I can just go to some of the challenges, and I've got John Strawbridge here with me, but there's a lot of work happening, as you would know, both around city centre parking, but also the room to move strategy. And thought it might just be worth giving you an update on where we're at with that. You'll have seen that what we proposed from 1 July is that parking charges change for public holidays and on Sundays, but we put on hold the overnight parking changes. We will re-engage with businesses and representative groups, and we're looking to identify how we might mitigate the impact where that's required before we go live with agreed changes, approved changes 1 October. John, is there anything you want to add in on that at this stage?
Thanks, Dean. Thank you, Chair. The re-engagement plan is very focused around face-to-face meetings, and that will be led by myself and other members of my direct parking design team, along with part of our consultation team under Dan Lambert. So the re-engagement is an opportunity for us to listen more, understand some of the issues, and seek combined solutions. So our undertaking is very simple. We're going out there to listen, re-engage. There's a timeline there, and we will then come up with a series of opportunities to continue to enable movement around the city.
Yep.
Thank you.
And alongside of this, we also know that the use of loading zones has been another key topic, haven't we, John? So maybe if I just hand this slide directly to you.
Thanks, Dean. Through the chair, we've got a couple of things in play here. We've got Room to Move, which is the overall parking strategy for Tamaki Makaurau over the coming 15 years, which is a high-level strategy which incorporates the use of comprehensive parking management plans. They take time, and they take time to put together. They also take time to implement. In the meantime, we have a parking program which is more responsive to the needs of the city as it grows and changes on a weekly basis. For example, servicing and loading is a key part of keeping the city as a living organism, if you like. So we've got to be able to move not only the servicing loading areas when there's disruption in terms of roadworks or whatever it may be, also looking at mobility challenges as well, moving mobility spaces around and being able to be agile enough to do that in our design and implementation over a shorter period of time than the longer term strategy. However, I will note that the longer term strategy is key as the city grows and the population grows. But in the meantime, there are some interventions that we need to put in place, and we need to put them in place far quicker than a longer term strategy.
If it's okay, Chair, we'll just continue to run through these updates, or we're happy to stop just whenever you...
Easier just to go through them, Dean,
Yeah.
I think, and people can record any questions they've got as they go.
Okay, thank you. Oh, dear me. So can I just draw your attention to the work that's being done on dynamic lanes and streets? You'll see some examples there of projects in pre-construction design and where we see future dynamic lanes that warrant further investigation. Look, I'll draw your eye to that, but I do have somebody that's available to provide more detail on the progress being made, but we certainly remain committed. I know that's a subject of great interest to the Mayor and councillors. The ferry program, I might just hand this over to you, or, sorry, Murray. Sure. Well, it's right or left, wasn't it?
Yeah, so just a few points on the ferry program, and then I'll hand to Stacey to talk about the cruise ships. So we're progressing with the build of 2 fully electric ferries and 2 hybrid electric ferries. They're progressing well. You can see some pictures there updating progress. We've also got resource consent for charging infrastructure at Half Moon Bay. And then we're moving ahead with the design for the charging infrastructure at downtown, and we'll progress with consent applications on that soon. Over to you, Stacey.
Thanks. So in terms of the cruise ships, so obviously the last season we did see considerable disruption due to cruise ships being in the ferry basin. With that, obviously, it did disrupt considerably our commuter peaks at both ends of the day. We've had a number of conversations with Ports of Auckland and reached agreement about an hour's extension in the evening peak. How we have not alleviated the morning peak issue that we've seen. So you will see that in terms of the analysis based on the schedule of cruise ships that are due, what that disruption will look like over the coming season. So from here, what we are looking at is a number of other mitigations in terms of operational changes, if we can get ferries docked elsewhere so that actually they can get to their location and still do their inbound journey after the boat has docked, to lessen that level of disruption that we saw last season. We have got what we've got, so it's about working within our constraints and see if we can do some operational changes in order to be more agile during the morning to limit that. Thank you.
Yep. So I'll pick up from here. So in terms of the level crossings, rail level crossing removal program, we're making some good progress with good engagement with community as well. The next step will be closure of the Lloyd Avenue pedestrian crossing on the 8th of June. That's in Mount Albert area. Then we're progressing with Kingdon Street crossing in Newmarket on the 22nd of June. And the Newmarket Business Association is fully across that. And there's been good consultation and awareness raising for those two crossing closures. Going with the crossing closures is improvement in other pedestrian access options in those areas. As has already been mentioned earlier, councillor briefing is coming up on the 26th of June for those interested in the wider rail level crossing program and progress. Coming up next financial year is O'Neill's Road, Homai and Church Street East. Designs are progressing with those level crossing closures. Next slide is on Karenga Happy station integration. So this is a piece of work. Anyone that's been up and around the Mercury Lane Cross Street area will see a lot of activity going on with City Rail Link progress there. The next phase of the work is work that AT, Auckland Transport, will be leading, and that will be around the streetscape and urban realm activities. There will be some changes in traffic flow directions in and around that station to make it easier. And already some progress has been achieved on this with a new right turn signal on the traffic lights from K Road into Queen, and then traffic will flow down Cross Street and then turn either right or left at the end of Cross Street. And there's a pedestrian mall planned for the top of Mercury Lane, which will have restricted access for residents of the George Court building and also deliveries and emergency vehicles. So yeah, a lot of work going on in that area, and will continue for a period of time through to the end of 25. Back to you, Stacey.
Great, thank you. So in regards to the K Road bus lanes, we have reached agreement with the Business Association in order to change the timing on those in collaboration with the Business Association. So one question that I know that people will be asking is, why did you change the weekends and not keep the weekends? And the data it does demonstrate that's one of our busier times in terms of the extension with those timeframes on K Road with the bus lanes. So we do need them, but there's a but. It is a compromise in the interim until we get to CRL. Why? Because given it's weekend, the rest of the journey that bus takes is not disrupted elsewhere. So the overall journey time is not marginally impacted by us removing them right now. So the Business Association understand that we will be coming back to them pre-CRL to be able to review these times. So it's a pragmatic solution to support the businesses and work together more pragmatically for the interim until we get to that. And we've agreed that we'll go back every 6 months. The team will meet them every 6 months to show them the data and share that data about what's seeing. They've broken it down by the minute, which is really helpful to get people to understand that. The Western service changes have been really successful. So with that new Western change, I think we predicted 2.08 million passenger journeys in the first 7 months. We're up to 2.8 million for the first 7 months. So it has been really successful, which is good. So we hope that continues and also produces returns for the K Road businesses along there. Thank you. Yes, sorry, agreed. Yeah. Thank you. And of course, the Howell Street traffic lights was being problematic. So those actual phasings have been changed already, and that is flowing a lot better from our understanding. So they're keeping an eye on that to make sure that continues. In regards to the Dopelma and Transit Next submissions, as per reported in terms of that, I have actually had a message from Fergus Gammy this morning and agreed to meet next week to continue the conversations with them in regards to the trackless trams. The team are doing an update on the feasibility study done previously. It's important to note that we have done this, we have reviewed this type of technology. Previously, they had these massive big batteries which actually would just rip up our roads. So because they've changed them from being fully battery electric to actually having hydrogen fuel cells in a smaller battery, it makes them more viable for our network. So we are really keen to actually get one here to trial as a proof point, so we can see how they function. With that. There were two other updates actually I wanted to give, if I may. So the first one, a positive one, in terms of, as of Tuesday, we reinstated a number of ferry services a couple of months ahead of schedule. So in terms of Devonport, Birkenhead, Bayswater and Half Moon Bay. We still have a number of other ferry services that need to get up to full capacity. They include Half Moon Bay weekends as well as Gulf Harbour. But the numbers are continually growing, which is really good in terms of our ferry services. The other one is to let you know, and there'll be further communications coming out on this afternoon, that we have been issued an industrial action notice by the Rail and Maritime Union, the RMTU, to our operator Auckland One Rail this morning. So they've been in collective bargaining for a considerable time, and I know this is the last thing everybody wants to hear in terms of more disruption to our train network, given it has been continually disrupted. They have reached an impasse in terms of their bargaining process. AOR have offered facilitated mediation, and trying to progress that. They are doing the right thing to get them back around the table to finish the conversation, so there's lessening of disruptions. It is not a full labour withdrawal. It is action in the form of an overtime ban and a work to rule scenario. So it will disrupt some of the peak services, not off-peak, only slightly. So as a mitigation in order to give customers really good, what I call confidence in terms of the timetable, they will run a 20-minute all-day timetable, and they will supplement the peaks on those key lines as they can, so that it is reliable for that time. It may be that we get, this is with effect Saturday, by the way, it may be that we get to Monday and they've got it back around the table, like we're encouraging them to do so. Thank you.
That finishes our presentation. More than happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. A lot happening in those different areas there, so we'll just take questions with the relevant staff are at the table, so just fire away, and we'll start off with Councillor Turner, Member Brown and Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you. Just talking about your making a room to move strategy, parking strategy, sort of just made me, so two questions on that. You made the comment about that there was some actions that you need to implement faster than the big picture sort of thing, but you didn't say what they were, and it also made me think, is it that not putting the cart before the horse? Because the problem is it stops the public seeing the big strategy and disconnects them from your long-term. What would you say about that?
Look, I acknowledge that there's some work to be done around communicating the longer-term strategy and the benefits of it. I guess the reasoning in behind the more responsive parking management that we've done for the last 8 to 10 years is that it's really to service the public needs. So it could be anything from the residents' parking zones, which we've put around the different parts of the city, particularly around the city centre and also in Tekapuna, and also to look at the servicing and loading across the city. So because things are dynamic and change, if we concentrate on the longer term strategy, there'll be a whole lot of issues that arise in the meantime that we just won't be able to, well, the city won't be able to cope with the change. So that's the rationale behind it. So, but in terms of the communication and the storytelling around parking, we've undertaken a program with our communications team, which is to talk about that bigger picture. But in the meantime, we still have to do stuff.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Still leaves me, when I hear these discussions, in my head, all I think of is joining the dots. And what I realise, or I think I realise about our transport system, is what we focus on is the joining, not the dots, which are the terminuses. And I think we are failing to see the cars in this. You know, I'm thinking about the Te Aratu northwestern interchange on the motorway there. There's no parking. And in these other things we talk about a walkable catchment of 800 metres. We're expecting a walkable catchment there of like 4 and 5 Ks. And so I just thought that, is it not, why aren't we concentrating on really big park and rides at our terminuses? Are they not what, is the lack of them it's taking away the potential for the transport, is it not?
Thank you. It's a really good question. I think park and rides have their place in terms of that, but we do have an integrated network. So for all of our rapid transit system, it is designed so that they have feeder services in order to provide good network coverage and make sure that they get to, it's a hub and spoke model. That's the way a network is. So do we need park and rides? Yes, we need park and rides, particularly on the extremities, in order to be able to have a bigger catchment for people to come to. But it is an integrated network. So for most people, if you're catching a rapid service, your feeder bus is free because it's integrated into your ticket cost. That's the way it works. Yeah, thank you.
Member Brown?
Thank you all. Always a pleasure to see you together. I've only got 3 questions. Just greasing the wheels. Okura provided feedback on A2's statement of intent and recommended the inclusion of 2 additional performance targets. Have these been identified, and can you indicate what these 2 measures are?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for providing it in writing beforehand. So I'm not sure whether you've got the written response, but I'm happy to send it on to you. But look, we do have that feedback around the SOI. And there is potential for us to include new measures, so we're working through that, and we're thinking about examples that we might be able to use. For example, the number of marae where a program of work was delivered, or the percentage of Auckland transport staff that identify as Māori. So we are working through those things, and we will come back to you when we've consolidated that based on the feedback and the discussions we have both with our board and Auckland Council.
Okay. I'm assuming you have the second question as well.
I do.
So I'll move on to my last question. In an attempt to sort of help you help me, we talk about alignment to government GPS and other documents, plans and acts.
Yeah.
Does AT check if their plans, projects, outcomes, performance targets align with the Haukura founding documents, our targets and our issues of significance? Because I think it would make both our jobs a lot easier.
I didn't quite get that one in writing, did I? Or maybe I did.
It's a side one, just to make sure you're listening.
Yeah, no. Look, of course we do. It's very important that we take on board Haukura's expectations, because they happen to be the Auckland Council family expectations. And we will bring that through the through our Māori outcomes strategy that we've committed to also completing towards the end of June, which I think we'll have completed all the consultation on that, including with Haukura and a couple of mana whenua groups. That'll be approved by the board in August. We don't have a July board meeting. But that's where I expect those things to come through, and we state our commitment to delivering on broader central government, Auckland Council and Haukura commitments. And if there is an issue around a trade-off, then we need to be able to flesh that out, and we would agree that with all the parties. But that's where I expect those to turn up, and we're committed to doing so.
Awesome. No, and that's great, because, you know, the interactions we have can be quite focused and particular when we're sort of reading from the same game playbook. So thank you for that answer.
That's our commitment and I've had the same discussion with Phil Wilson around how we can continue to lean into this, and our commitment to honour what we've set out to do with you and Council. Yep.
Ka pai. Thank you, Dean.
Councillor Filipaina?
Kia ora, Chair. Tēnā koe te rangatire, Dean, and tēnā koutou katoa to the Auckland Transport team. Look, it's interesting that the slide about Transit Next and Doppelmayr is up there. So the first time with any conversation, was that when you got contacted this morning by Fergus, just to our staff?
Yes, that's correct.
Can I just clarify
So,
though,
no one-
sorry, Alf, can I just clarify what conversation, because there's been a lot of conversations with Doppelmayr over a long period, so I want to check what we're talking about here. I don't want to understate the conversations that have been had.
Okay, it's in relation to the recommendation on the 9th of May at the previous Transport and Infrastructure Committee, where there was going to be a report coming back, because my next part I was to say, is this the report that was referred to on the 9th of May is what we are getting today? Is that the report back? And has there been any conversation with Doppelmayr since the 9th of May? That's the clarification.
This is not the report that I can confirm. As for discussions with Doppelmayr in depth, I haven't had those personally, but Stacey, I know you've been working on this. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, and it's important to also make sure that they're meeting with NZTA for these rapid projects, particularly when there's phases of the project. I think that's really important to understand. So I understand that they have recently met with NZTA, which is good, and I have had some conversation with them on that. But I am meeting Mr. Gammy next week.
So, Stacey and Chair, just to supplement you to that, can I then assume that the same thing has happened with Transit Next around any discussions?
Our team have engaged Becca, that was with them last time, in terms of their local representation who've been working on that. Yes, we're updating our feasibility study based on the new information, and they have a timeline and plan to engage.
Okay, last question, Chair. And when will the report come back to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee as per the recommendation on the 9th of May?
Yeah, I'm trading notes with Stacey here, but it'll be August or September. We'll confirm that for you.
Kia ora. And Straub, it's good to see you in your distinguished look, my friend.
Thank you, Alf.
Okay, very nice compliment to finish off the questioning there. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my apologies for getting a couple of pages stuck together in the previous item. I couldn't see this report on Nexus, so I thought I only had one crack. First, before I ask a question, I want to thank AT for modifying the bus lanes on K Road to something a little bit more sensible, and also for backing off on totally banning cars from Wellesley Street West at this point in time. I can't give any bouquets for the 24-hour parking charges in the inner city. I just think it will further hollow out our inner city, which I think is counter-strategic. My question, first of all, relates, as you probably heard, to the Waiheke Competitive Service, Waiheke Direct, about the delay in them or Wharf 3 getting hop card services.
Thank you. I will come back to you with an update. I don't have an up-to-date information in terms of that timeline, but they continue to work in good faith to try and progress that as fast as practical.
Just a little bit concerned, it's been pointed out to me, and I recall that wharf does have hop pedestals which worked when the main wharf was being repaired. And why, if it can work for Fuller's, why can't it work for Waiheke Direct, like instantaneously? That's how IT normally works. Or am I missing something here?
In short, yes. And I will come back to you with a bit more information. Thank you.
The second question, also I've rehearsed, and that is AT had an excellent reporting system on all forms of transport, from trains to cycling, motorway congestion, everything else, called monthly indicators. And that seemed to disappear off the board agenda about a year ago, and I assumed that maybe they're going to report every quarter, but it's just seemed to have stopped altogether, and I think that is unhelpful. Is there any reason why that excellent report is no longer available?
Thank you. It was superseded by, in terms of the updated reporting, all of which is reported monthly on our website and accessible by everybody. Would you like me to send a link to the previous one?
Okay. That's good. I'm just curious why it's no longer on the board agenda where I normally look for these things. Could someone tell me where, given the presentations this morning, which focused on rail PT, what is the current patronage per year at this point of time for rail PT?
It's about 14 million. Yeah, about 14 million, considering we're probably about between 60 and 70% up and down with the various sort of closures that we're having.
Okay, if someone could send me an email with those links to those indicators, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Mayor Brown.
Thank you for the presentation. A couple of questions. One on the electric ferries. We seem to be, I mean, these were started well before I got here. How is the cost benefit of all this going? Because the charging things seem to be quite expensive and coming in quite late. It seems surprising we are just getting resource consents for something or other now. Does it still make sense, or is it just a massively expensive feel-good thing to save the planet? I mean, because it would be better off just buying low-use diesel ones or not? I just want to know, does it make sense, or have we just gone mad?
No, thanks for the question. We've recently reviewed the program and the financials. The benefit cost does stack up for stage one, which is these initial boats and charging. But because it is cutting edge technology, and there's a little bit of uncertainty out there as to how technology will evolve, we will definitely, after stage one, completely review the whole business case. And if it doesn't make sense to proceed, yeah, then we would look at changing the propulsion method.
I guess it just strikes me as one of those things that sounds good, but I didn't know that it's been proved good. I'd like to have some feedback on that as we get on. Thank you. And in terms of leading edge technology, instead of being leading edge of new things like ferries, it'd be really good if we could be catching up in the songs we were talking about before with signals and other bits and pieces, as brainy as they are. But yeah, I know you're going to work on that. With the parking guy, I had a nice chat to the parking gentleman during lunchtime. Thank you very much for that. City centre parking, I was hoping to get a region-wide policy so that we can see what we're doing everywhere, because we have a number of city centres. We call the city centre, it can be anywhere. I don't know where the city centre is. Is it just Queen Street and K Road, or does it include the peripheral suburbs? There's a lot of people living in off Ponsonby Road and off towards the University Caucus. I don't know where that is. Perspective is kind of missing. We've got town centres. We've got. I just want to see. Can before we do anything about overnighting in one area, can we have a big picture of the whole? What I call the city includes Wellsford, which I don't think has the same problems as Queen Street, and Pukekohe, which has some of them. Is that reasonable that we could have a bit of a feel and where is, what do you call a city centre?
Very reasonable question, and the room to move strategy and document identifies pretty much everything from Puki through to Wellsford in terms of a tiered approach of when we might go in and do comprehensive plans for those town centres, city centres, rapid transit areas, alluding to Councillor Turner's earlier question around availability and opportunities there for enablement. The city centre, just to answer the second part of the question, the city centre it's the concrete perimeter of the motorway and the outlying suburbs around there, the likes of St Mary's Bay, Herne Bay, Ponsonby, Grafton.
Well, that's good, but the use of the word city centre kind of resulted in an outburst from the heart of the city, which should be called something else. It's not actually a health charity, as a lot of people think. It would be nice if it was sort of like, I think city centre is the wrong words, but I don't know what the right words are, but it gave the wrong impression. So it does include the areas where people are paying $100,000 to park a car. Okay, and that's good, because I think a council-wide discussion about demand and availability would prepare us for I want to have more income from parking, because otherwise it comes somewhere else. And I do pay $100,000 for a car park, and I can't see why other people should park for nothing outside. But it does need to be sold in a big picture thing rather than just bang, and I'm sure you've learnt that. But so you can assure me that we're going to have something roll on there, and perhaps have a discussion about it as we get there. Is that all right?
Yes, I can assure you of that, and bring it back to this this forum.
And I think it needs to be linked to these the changes in fines, because my argument with the government is that we've got one nationwide fine for parking, and every time we do something right across the nation, it doesn't work in most places. And so $12 might be a good fine in Gore, but it's not enough in Ponsonby. And so if we just don't show some flexibility across our region, it's very hard for me to argue with the government that they should show some flexibility across the whole country. So thanks for that.
Acknowledge that. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right, Councillor Fletcher, Ferry Simpson and Councillor Williamson to finish us off.
The Mayor has touched on perhaps some of the issues I wanted to raise, but language is so very important, and we're all trying to rebuild, the trust within the council family, and so what I am a little bit confused about is paused for further discussion. The word paused is paused, deferred, is it, and discussion and consultation, I just want to understand so that when I'm speaking to constituents, I absolutely understand what that means. So I just want you, in terms of demystifying the language that we're using on these things, because they are sensitive, and because they're so sensitive, I want to be very clear with people. So could you just expand a little bit further on what paused for further discussion actually is?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. The intention was, in response to the feedback, was we would continue, so I'll repeat using my words, hopefully giving clarity. We will continue with the Sundays and public holiday charging in the Auckland city centre area as defined earlier. We were pausing, and I can't think of a better word, but we're pausing implementation of the overnight charges in the city centre until we'd gone back, re-engaged across the key stakeholder groups to better understand the impact as they saw it on their people, those that they represented, and identify what, if any, mitigations we might be able to bring in. One example might be you don't do any change in parking overnight, or you might increase the parking chargeable period from 6 p.m. to another time, or you might cap it out at $10. So we want to engage on those things and understand. So we paused implementation until we've had that re-engagement to better understand how we manage this with the people that have got a real stake in outcomes in the city centre. So we haven't cancelled. Another word might be defer, but pause seems to be the most appropriate word.
No, that's good. That's fine. And what you've said today gives me the comfort in going back to others to say, look, there very likely could be changes, but it isn't just a ticking box exercise. So
No, I can give you the assurance it's not a ticking box exercise. We know where that'll end up.
Okay. And the second thing is, in terms of Lloyd Avenue and the crossing this coming weekend, what comms are you planning, further comms? Because there is still in the community, there's still quite a bit of discussion going on.
Yes, thanks for the question. And yeah, we're very aware that the closure of crossings needs a comprehensive comms package around it. The approach that we've taken is to have good engagement with the communities around those crossings. And then we have a 1 month, let's call it very focused communications program leading up to the crossing closure with individuals going around businesses and households, knocking on doors, giving leaflets out. There's signs are put up in the street close to the crossing closure so that people are aware of the dates. And when the crossing actually closes, so that the first one will be 8th of June, we'll have ambassadors in the streets to be able to direct people to the alternative crossing points. And so it might not be perfect, but there's been a lot of energy and focus put into it. We'd welcome any feedback of how we can do better, but it is something that we're focusing on getting right. Thank you.
I think going forward, one of the things that the Mayor was talking about, what the city centre means to people, can mean different things, but where you're talking about the more central part of Auckland, while we talk about localised communities and, we're a series of villages, the reality is, and we saw it with other road closures in recent times, that people can use from across town. We don't just deal with the communities around those individual villages. There can be wider impacts on other Aucklanders living around the region. And I'm worried that we don't always communicate these things to a wider audience. We might have leaflets and things that are happening in the immediate vicinity, and I think in part this is perhaps where there was a bit of controversy with Meola Road. We've got to understand that the role these smaller community assets and so forth have on a wider Auckland. And I wonder whether that's something that Auckland Transport is giving some thought to in terms of ongoing communication.
Yeah, so,
Sorry, Mark.
I was going to say, absolutely, we're taking on board that feedback and looking at what we can do to reach wider audiences. I guess the issue with these two particular pedestrian crossings, they are pedestrian crossings, so the catchment area that use them is generally in and around those. As we move towards vehicle crossings, you're absolutely right that there's a much wider reach, and so that will become of increasing importance that we reach a wider audience. So absolutely, we're looking at how we can do that better.
I'll leave it there, Chair.
Councillor Ferry.
Thank you. Hopefully my connection doesn't drop this time. So my question follows on about Lloyd Avenue. one thing that we've been getting, and I want to acknowledge that there was a mistake with an early sign that said May 8th, and it was supposed to be June 8th, and that created a bit of confusion and concern, and that was quickly corrected. So thank you for that. But there is quite a high level of scepticism in the community about the necessity of the closure at all. And my understanding and what I've been relaying to constituents, I just wanted to check with you now, is that basically KiwiRail have determined that the crossing needs to close and have to a large extent determined the time frame of that. And so AT kind of just has to go with it. Is that correct?
I can talk to that. It's not an arbitrary decision by KiwiRail. It's linked very much to the City Rail Link program. So the next stage in City Rail Link is testing and commissioning. So that means that we'll start to run trains through the network. And as they start to ramp up the rail traffic in and around the City Rail Link loop and the tracks leading up to it, it means that the amount of time available for people to cross will be significantly reduced. So a key reason for the crossing closures is to avoid people getting frustrated waiting to cross and then trying to dash across the lines. And so I think in terms of the key messaging, it's to say these crossings are getting closed ahead of the City Rail Link commissioning and testing. And then when City Rail Link comes online, people will see even more the reason why they needed to be closed.
Yeah, I think the key thing I was looking for there, and I appreciate that context, is that actually the decision maker on whether these pedestrian crossings remain open or closed is actually KiwiRail. Is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say it's just KiwiRail. It's a combination of Auckland Transport, KiwiRail and City Rail Link Limited. And it also has other factors of the rail safety regulator, which is another entity altogether. So it's a combination of different parties. I wouldn't pin it solely on KiwiRail, although they are the ones that own and manage the tracks, and they have a duty of care from that perspective, yes.
So what is Auckland Transport's ability to potentially turn around and say, no, we don't think one of these crossings should be closed?
Look, they're all looked at on a case-by-case basis. I wanted to probably give you a little bit more sort of understanding as to why with the level crossings, because I think that's important. So, I mean, the number one is safety in terms of that. So, and that's a sort of given in terms of that. So people do take more risks, you know, when you have higher, more frequency. The other one is time benefits. So if we want to run a better timetable, we need to take out those impediments in the timetable that slow things down. And so we can't stick to timetable. We'll have reliability if we have too many of these things across our network. And we've got a prolific amount in comparison to others. And so it is about that network resilience. It's about the efficiency of the timetables as well. And therefore, you know, improves the mode shift and people's trust in using rail because the timetables will be better. So these are hard conversations, but we just need to make sure that we're doing the right level of engagement with the community so that we're building solutions to be able to mitigate any sort of negative consequences of the closures. And really keen to hear the feedback on that, because you're obviously getting that from your constituents in the community. What are you hearing would be really helpful for the team to be able to build. I've got a couple more notes here. From Donald, who's leading this program. He said that he's had some positive engagement with Blind and Low Vision Institute at Home Live, because obviously that's a key one too. They've done additional engagement with residents and businesses at Kingdon Street and others to deliver the best possible outcome. Positive engagement with emergency services to ensure their concerns are built into the level crossing program as well, because that's another consideration. And further workshops with key stakeholders such as CCOs, utility providers, etc. They said that they had the opportunity of having an elected member workshop on the 26th of June. And I understand, he said, we held one-to-one briefings with any councillors who requested them as well. And that was only yourself, Councillor Ferry and Councillor Turner and Councillor Henderson were the three that had those individual briefings, but there is another workshop on the 26th of June about the broader program and what that means. Also trying to, I guess, help people understand what it means to the train frequency and running going forth. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I found my briefing with Donald really, really useful, and I feel I understand this quite well. What I'm trying to unpack a bit here is that there's a high level of skepticism in the community, and how do we, we as in the big family of people who are improving our transport system, how do we, I guess, rebuild that trust? And the Lloyd Avenue crossing is sort of one tiny little example out of many that we could all, I think, point to. So this has been helpful for me. I've got an email to reply to, and I thought I would ask these questions and get some answers on the public record before I did that. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Simpson?
Thanks, Chair. Look, I've mastered the art of doing two things at once, but sorry, I haven't mastered the art of being in two places at once. So I do have some questions, and sorry I'm a bit late to the party, and I might do some more direct follow-up. But I did have a question as well around the rail crossing in Kingdon Street. And I suppose my question through you, Chair, to you, Dean, to Dan, is can you give local councillors some really good comms around this? Because, you know, a lot of people say, well, why are you closing it CRL? You said it's for CRL, that's 2 years away, you know. You've got 2 years, leave it operating. So my first question is, can you give us something that we can tell the wider community and the background and the reasoning to that? I did have Lloyd Avenue and Mount Albert as my other option, but I've just heard that that's been dealt with. First question, yeah.
Yes, okay.
We can absolutely share in more communications and what we've actually shared on that. It's a really good point, though, about the why, and so that's something that I picked up on. So the reason why these are closing early is because there's got to be a lot of signalling changes. So the whole signalling system is being upgraded for CRL. So, you know, part of that in terms means that we need to make these changes now as an opportunity in order to do that properly. And so because once we start doing test trains and everything through the network, all those signals need to align. So the likes of the Kingdon Street one was initially planned for last weekend in terms of that signalling upgrade. That's now happening in a couple of weeks. That's the why behind it. That's the why early. So in terms of people understanding that, I think it's important for them to understand that broader picture, because otherwise they'll be like, well, CRL's still a couple of years away.
Exactly, yeah. That's my point. I don't think people get that now why.
We'll get the comms to you, and it's a fair question, and we'll continue to do that for councillors in general, because I'm sure that many of you will get questions. Yeah.
Because the reason up till now has always been for CRL, you know? So, yeah, that's my understanding.
And it remains a CRL. It's just we have to get done before we arrive at that full throttle day one. So I agree. We'll get that out.
And also with Kingdon, of course, it's very much from the Newmarket Business Association's perspective too. So they have a big role as opposed to just residential community. Okay. My second question, I hope this hasn't been answered. It's in respect of ferries. And it appears that there's still some disruption, even with the knowledge of what happened this cruise season just gone. So can we at least change the timetables to give certainty, or is there a longer term solution? I'm still hearing issues around that.
Thank you. Yes, there is still issues around that. So come next season, we still will have that problem during the AM peak. We've pretty much mitigated that PM peak side of it with the hour extension. Ports did outline why they can't do that, and that's got a lot to do with MPI timing in terms of their working hours, as well as restrictions in terms of the Waitemata Harbour around whales and movements of big vessels. And so the team will be looking at other operational things that they can do to help mitigate that and lessen that number, because I think what we came up with was that there would be 10% of morning peak services disrupted on those days when we have certain cruise ships within the harbour. And so they've got it all mapped out. So now it's sort of going through sort of one by one different types of mitigations. And if boats can be berthed somewhere else so the ferry gets their out destination to come in and still meet that timetable. So they are doing a lot of work on that now.
Thanks, because that's another comms issue, because if you had the option to work from home, right, and this was going to be a problem on whatever date, that would be the date that you potentially would work from home. But to know in advance, as opposed to get 2-minute notice that actually your ferry wasn't going, if it comes to me, let alone the people who are from the North Shore, it's got to be pretty big. And my last question is just around the new plans for bus lanes up Pitt Street. Look, these look good, but just want to check, has the fire service been consulted around those so that it's got adequate access in and out for its appliances once these changes have been made? And if so, are they happy?
Yes, so the answer is absolutely yes. There's been comprehensive consultation with all the affected parties in that area, including the fire service, and the systems, they're happy with where we've landed in terms of the design.
I just pick up on that question about the ferries station. I appreciate what you say about trying to find mitigations, and you have been quite, quite blunt here in terms of the 24 that are anticipated to significantly disrupt the morning peak, and there's a whole swag of ferry runs in there. Just a question that comes up from some of the ferry commuters is what do they do overseas in places like Australia, where they have more of these ferries visiting, and in a number of cases they have quite frequent ferry services. What approach do they take? Is it different, or is there something in there that we could learn from?
In most circumstances, so if you consider us in terms of Sydney, they've got purpose-built cruise facilities, so the design of their system doesn't interrupt their commuter services, so it's designed that way, and that's our weakness right now. And of course that's something that I think with our planning going forward that we're going to have to work out is, if cruise ships continue and they get busier, how we propose more permanent mitigations there.
Right, thanks. Because I guess I think certainly the tone is, and I know you would have picked it up on previous occasions where certainly from the public of Auckland it's round the wrong way, where they're getting accommodated at the expense of our commuters, who we're there to serve. But we appreciate what's been done, but that's obviously going to be one that's going to be front and centre for all those affected communities. Councillor Turner, Walker, and then Williamson.
No, I just had a different example. You've answered about 3 times. Thank you.
That's great. That's the sort of question we like. Councillor Walker might not be so lucky on this one. Councillor Walker.
I'll do my best, Mr. Chair. Can you confirm that we'll be having a report on the electric ferries and the electric hybrids in an upcoming meeting, and just identify when? And can you give us some assurance that that report will cover off costs and any cost overruns and design issues? And I am heartened with the comment that you made earlier that there'll be a complete review going forward before we actually allocate any tenders or moves to additional ferries. And will that report also cover off the designs that might be fit for purpose?
So what we can do, Councillor, and more generally, Transport Infrastructure Committee, we will bring a report back to you which gives you an update on the ferry replacement strategy. Stage 1's already in place. We will share which is the electrification and or hybrid solutions. We will give you feedback on how that's gone and what we've learnt. And we'll give you our thinking on stage 2, emerging, which in the absence of co-funding through the GPS, which is a possibility, and the cost of electric could end up being low emission diesel option. So we'll bring that into here. I mean, I don't want to overpromise on all of the analysis, because there'll be elements in there that are confidential to the proponents, but we'll give you a feel for where we're landing and the strengths and weaknesses of both approaches, and I think that would be useful for you to more fully understand. As for timing, which probably is sitting there, it's probably a few months off, isn't it? It'll be later this year.
Last time you said July.
Yeah. we won't be ready for July to do that report. So we will, I don't remember saying July, so sorry if I've forgotten about that, but we will come back to you with a date. It'll be later this year.
Okay, the other question I've got just goes to the overnight parking, and I'm encouraged that there is a pause there. In respect of your engagement and the way you look at this issue, will you be taking a case study approach, looking at various aspects of the market? For example, you've got residents in particular areas that might be defined. You've got various businesses that are affected and so on, so that it isn't just a sort of a consultation tick box exercise, but you've got an idea of the particular unintended consequences that that might occur. Do you take any kind of case study approach?
I'm going to hand this over to John, and I may have some comment after he finishes, but John.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. The simple answer is yes. We will be looking at conversations with all affected parties that we can. As the councillors in the TIC would appreciate, we have had a lot of feedback and a lot of direct feedback, and so we're well aware of our audience and have already reached out to a significant number of those stakeholders, and are lining up our meetings face to face as we move through the coming weeks. So the answer is yes, and I think it would be fair to say that it is an exercise in listening and learning, and then working together to find, as Dean alluded to earlier on, find some solutions that that can work for most of the people.
Thanks, John. And my last question just goes to ferries, and particularly the Gulf Harbour run. That run has been severely affected. It's really encouraging, and I commend the additional services that are coming online. Do you think it's appropriate and timely to have some form of marketing or confidence building campaign to the community, so that you actually lift the patronage?
Absolutely. I mean, I would recommend we wait until we get through the dark gloom of winter before we start doing a lot of marketing around that. But of course, in terms of the recent timetable changes, there has been a lot of communication on that, and there will continue to be for the next few weeks ahead in order to drive, uplift in terms of patronage on those routes. And as we get Gulf Harbour back to full steam, we'll be doing exactly the same, and it'll be targeted to the community to make sure that they're well aware of it. Yeah.
Thanks. Gulf Harbour could use a shot in the arm.
Okay, Member Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A really quick answer to this, and like the Mayor, it's before my time, so I just don't know. But what was the rationale around providing ferries and ferry services? And I only ask this because I'm intimate with the CapEx and OpEx required to run it successfully, quite aside from environmental and recruitment issues. What was the rationale to actually fire this up?
Is that the whole ferry service itself, and why do we have a ferry service in Auckland?
More so our involvement.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So more specific.
Why have we got public sector involvement, and what could otherwise be a potentially fully private sector service? Is that the question?
It is, because knowing the people that are involved with it now, and what is needed to make sure it does run successfully is massive, and I just wanted to ask that simple question.
Well, I'll give Stacey 30 seconds, but that is not a small question, Member Brown. Stacey.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
Oh, but it's a good question, and I think I can see the logic behind the thinking sort of back when that was done, because it gives Aucklanders that continuity of service, that you're going to have a proper timetable and that it's stable and that it's not going to be ripped out from underneath you, and actually it's an integral link and absolutely important for the resilience of our city. It's an essential link, yeah. And so that is the why behind it. In terms of the cost and coordination, yes, it's huge. I think as we get patronage and public confidence back in ferry services, we'll see that improve substantially, which will be really good, and it'll be back in line where we think it needs to be.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's not an easy question, but I am intimate with the challenges the current service providers have, and not all of them are they're doing. So I just think it's quite a big industry to get into, and I was just ruminating why. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, 150-year maritime history probably plays into it a little bit too. Councillor Williamson, could you finish us off, please?
I'm not sure that's the right expression, but I'll give it a go. Look, first of all, just one of the things I wanted to comment on, you talked about the Ellerslie-Panmure Highway and asked Lata if she could put that photo up. That's a going to the city Ellerslie-Panmure Highway, 2 lanes. But in the morning, where I put that red arrow, people just car park. And so the 2 lanes, which would normally flow quite well and would get a lot of people into the city, becomes a whole lot of people trying to get along there and being jammed up. And I would have thought if you just put some signs on the side of that road, which just says no parking 6 to 9 a.m. or something, because it's no problem in the rest of the day. But you will not be able to drive along that lane, 2 lanes in the morning. It gets really jammed because sometimes only 1 car will park there, but there is no stopping them. And I'd suggest you have a quick look at that. That would be a lot cheaper than the dynamic laning.
Yeah,
no, I mean the little yellow dots on the side of the road.
Well,
or a sign up that said no parking there.
Well, I tell you, we'll investigate it, commit to that, but it's also committed as part of the dynamic lane investigation, which may add other benefits over and above no parking down there. So we will come back to you when we get to that point. Councillor?
Okay. It's just that there never used to be, and there's a big complex or campus there for St John, and it turns out they must have a whole lot more staff in recent years, because now the staff are all parking out on the road rather than in the car parks they've got, because there's not enough of them. So all it does is it stops the Ellerslie-Panmure Highway being an artery, and it becomes a clogged artery. Anyway, my second point was to throw a really big bouquet to AT. At our T&I meeting last month, you'll recall I had a bit of a grump about I had been trying to get hold of a person who could help me with a constituency matter regarding the cycleway. The good news is that Mark Lambert got in touch with me almost immediately after the meeting, put me in touch with somebody at AT called Adrian Lord, who from this point on will be known as Good Lord by me, because he made a distinct impression. He came out to my house on a Saturday. We walked the cycleway. He saw firsthand how dangerous some of the curves were and how narrow they were. He's offered to get some share with care signs up as quickly as he can, and we're going to agree where the most appropriate parts would be. He's also looking at putting a walk your bike only some of the signs, because they're too narrow for even 2 people to walk beside each other, let alone someone to be walking with a cyclist coming at them. So I have to say that from that afternoon, I had the most amicable, productive. He's an Englishman with a very, very good Monty Python-based sense of humour, and we had a damn good bloody walk and a good chuckle along the way, and found some solutions to a problem that's been a bit of a weeping sore for a long time. So a big congratulations to AT.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Adrian is a very approachable and helpful man too, as anyone who has any dealings with him. And on the basis of that rousing endorsement, Councillor Williamson will give you the honour of moving. And we get Councillor Baker to second. I don't think anyone needs to, we've had a good shot at all this. So I'll just put it to the vote. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, AT team.
That last picture of his is what a dynamic lane is.
Wrap this up reasonably quickly now, folks, if we're of a mind to. The next item is largely an information report, a summary of transport and infrastructure memoranda. Moved by Councillor Fletcher, seconded by Councillor Walker. All those in favour? Carried, great. No extraordinary business. We just have one item in confidential, so we'll just have to clear the public gallery if you don't mind, folks. It's a confidential item from Audit and Risk Committee, and the reason for confidentiality contains risk reporting and detailed top risks confidential to the substantive council-controlled organisations. There can be no stronger case for confidentiality than our CCO's integrity. And I said that with a straight face. Who is desperate to get out of here, I can see by body language. Seconded by Councillor Turner. All those in favour? Aye.